here. All right. Hi, everybody. Excited to be here. Today we have Robert joining us, and pretty excited for him to give us some great insight into the Allora ecosystem. As you may know, I'm Austin from Crack Labs, co-founder over here. And Robert, I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Austin. This is I'm Robert Kalura, head of solutions at Allora Labs. Been with Allora for about a year. Previous to this, I was also working at solutions at Chainlink Labs in Layer Zero. Happy to be a part of this hackathon and being joined with you, Austin, for the session.
Definitely. Do you want to go ahead and jump into slides, or do you want to kind of cover maybe the
Yeah, I
involvement
think what
on
we'll do is I know that we've got a good fair amount to talk about. I'll do a brief intro into Allora, what our mission is, and then we'll go into the specifics around for the builders out there that are participating, how to access the inferences and some of the plugins and things that we're doing from that perspective to make it easy and frictionless to consume inference from the network, right?
Okay, perfect.
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen.
All right, there you are.
So we'll start with the high level, right? So Allora Labs, we're building the Allora network. The network is a decentralized chain, and really what we're focused on is an abstraction layer for intelligence. When you think of the AI stack, right, you got data storage, you've got models, you've got consumers, you have inference. We're really focused on inferences, right? And what does that mean? You can think of the network as an abstraction or aggregation layer for inference, right? It's this marketplace where, when you look at the landscape, there are consumers who want to make requests to for high quality inferences, and then there's model makers, right? We have a community of model makers. We also have in-house ML engineers who are basically building models that literally submit inferences to the network, right? The network itself is broken up into what we call topics. You can think of these as subnets or subnetworks, where each topic is a scoped or defined ML task, right? And that's really where the participation happens. So you literally have this permissionless network. You've got the ability to create a topic. Like a very clear example here, a simple example is, what's the price of Bitcoin going to be in 20 minutes? You have consumers. You can think of the network with consumers like we have predictive price feeds, right? So this topic is going to supply a network synthesizer aggregated output. And so you can interact with the chain via RPC. You could interact with the chain requesting inference, via our Allora Lab centralized API. And we have the ability to bring these inferences on chain through a smart contract and an RPC request, right? But again, to circle back here, you've got these you have these topics that are clearly defined and what the ML objective is, and really anyone can participate, right? Consumers can request inference, and then ML engineers are basically competing in terms of the rewards that are paid out for the network for highly intelligent inferences. Let's go ahead and we're going to scroll down. We'll go a little bit into some of the highlights of how we actually aggregate the inferences, and we'll get into that here in a second. As far as the community or the models, the network is very much geared towards time series supervised machine learning tasks. So yes, in these early days, we're very much focused on inferences around price predictions, right? Obviously we're definitely talking to a lot of DeFi protocols, agents, right? Where they obviously don't necessarily have in-house ML engineering or modeling techniques or quants, and that's the purpose of Allora Labs. We want the network to be the place where when you think of high quality inferences, you think of the Allora network where you can make those requests. So on my screen, we're going to go into a little bit more depth before we get into consumption, right? You can see here in the middle of the screen is the topic coordinator, right? So the topic coordinator I mentioned earlier, the network is segregated into topics, right? And the coordinator obviously does a lot. You've got various workers. I mentioned this earlier. You're going to have machine learning, ML engineers, model makers. Again, they could be in the community. Anyone can participate. If you have a model, you can register your worker, your inference worker, with that topic. You can scan. We do have an Explorer, a front end we call the Allora Studio, where you can see a list of all the current topics. And as a participant, you can say, you know what, I've got this model, or maybe I want to build a model and participate, and I want to submit inference to that particular topic. The network will basically has the ability to evaluate these inferences when they're actually sent. So you have on the right hand side the reputers. The reputers are very critical to securing these topics, right? So if you think about the nature of DeFi and trustless consumption, you know, how do you verify, or how can you really, if you're a DeFi protocol, or you're a builder, an agent builder, and how do you really know, like, who's building these models? What's the quality of them, right? So we have this application, and we have this layer, this other actor in the system called a reputer. And the reputers are basically more or less off-chain nodes where they're actually um, what they're doing is they're making requests to APIs, like data provider APIs, because for example, if you're going to, we have a topic where we're predicting the price of Bitcoin in 20 minutes. Well, some time is going to go by 20 minutes later. The reputers are actually going to make a request to their actual data provider endpoints, and they're going to get the actual price of Bitcoin, 20 minutes later. And the reputers are responsible for actually evaluating the predictions, the inferences that came in from the workers for that particular time period. So they're very critical to the system in terms of, evaluating what the inference, how good the inferences are, how accurate they are, which is determining how the rewards are paid out, and which workers are going to earn rewards. But they're also important from, eliminating noise or outlier detection in terms of making sure that, what the consumers who are making requests for inference, they're not going to end up getting a poor network synthesized inference, or an inference that's far off, right? So the reputers are critical from that perspective, right? And then on the bottom there, you'll see the forecasters. The forecasters, what they're doing is, they're basically looking at the historical performance of these various model makers, these machine learning models, and what they're doing is basically saying, look, we see the historical performance, how these particular workers have been performing. Let's go ahead and actually weight them, right? In terms of, we can look at the historical, and we can say, we can make some predictions or forecasts that, these particular models seem to perform best at these time periods, maybe because of the way they were trained, the data that they were used, just the general nature of machine learning models. Some are going to perform better under certain market conditions, sideways markets, volatility, etc. What does that mean to the consumer? Well, that's the inference synthesis part, right? That's the part where Allora shines, is that we have all these various workers that are submitting inference, but instead of just taking a median or a mean and averaging them out, the forecasters and what the network does with the inference synthesis is to create this more performant output. So you can think of what the consumers get as the sum of all the parts, right? And because the topic coordinator, all the things that we have in place, the actors, the forecasters, right, we're able to provide this more performant output than any one of the individual model workers that are submitting inference. And that's important because that has meaningful impact to consumers downstream, right? If you think about, coming, a lot of us come from Chainlink Labs. Obviously, there's when you think about decentralized data sources or oracles, a lot of them just take a median, they remove outliers. But wouldn't it be great if you can basically forecast or predict or apply intelligent weights that are not static, that are basically dynamically adjusted for every epoch, so that you get the best of all worlds, right? Because you could literally have a model that performs great 95% of the time, but that 5% it performs very poorly, adjusting the network adjusting that weight dynamically. doesn't have an overall impact on the actual inference, the prediction that consumers are going to receive from the network downstream. All right. I was just going to pause to see if there's any questions out there from the audience before we move on to the consumption. Um, doesn't look like there's any at this point.
We don't have any currently, no.
Okay.
So I think
Yeah.
your presentation's nice and clear and everyone's following along.
Okay. Let's get into let's talk about, as it relates to Thunderdome, right? So what we've been doing over the last, first start off that the Allora network, we're on testnet, and we have dev mainnet, right? We're very close to public mainnet. As I mentioned earlier, the network is segregated into topics. These are obviously defined ML tasks or objectives. On my screen, you can see that we have a list of topics that are already out here, right? Again, anyone can create a topic. The network is permissionless. I will throw the caveat out there that dev mainnet, we are being a little careful and cautious in the rollout. So right now that there is a permission for actually creating a topic, but again, as we get into public mainnet, things are going to open up, right? I mentioned earlier, so we have an SDK for builders out there that they want to use our SDK to make requests to get inferences. Allora Labs, we also have a centralized API to make requests. I have on the screen, obviously, we have an Eliza OS plugin. We actually do have more than one plugin available from various frameworks. I only listed Eliza here because I know it was part of the hackathon, but there are other. Allora Labs has, we do have plugins available across, most of the major agent frameworks, right? And then, something recently that I don't have on here is we also do have an MCP server. So as everyone's probably aware, MCP has obviously taken off very quickly. A lot of Web 2, Web 3 entities now have an MCP server, and it seems to be the predominant way that the industry is going in terms of LLMs and various being able to make tools available to builders out there, right? So the topics that we made available for the Thunderdome, you can see on my screen. As I mentioned earlier, that workers can participate. Model makers can participate and submit inference to more than one topic. Again, these topics, they have an epoch. As I mentioned earlier, this epoch length is how often the rewards are paid out, as well as how often the actual inference servers, the models, are submitting inference to the network for that obviously intelligent weighting and aggregation, right? As far as the repeaters, is the same thing. So for a 5-minute price prediction, basically we had set up every 1 minute, the network is going to expect inferences to be sent from the workers to the network. And so basically, this 5-minute prediction, you're going to get a fresh 5-minute prediction every 1 minute. Okay. 8 hours is the same thing. We're doing that every minute as well. So you can see what's available for the builders out there from a price prediction standpoint. The SDK, we support 2 languages, Python and TypeScript. I've got links here, obviously, to links to our Eliza OS plugin for those builders that are using that framework. The API, we did just grant the general API. There is an API key for builders out there. Obviously, everyone's got access to the Thunderdome materials. They can grab that key. But you can see the way to make the requests to the API. There's some samples in here. And what you're going to get back, you'll notice that you've got a timestamp, what the topic ID is when you're making that request. You'll see a network inference normalized. So that's the actual, this particular topic is Solana price prediction. And you notice it says network inference. I want to make that clear that, you're not making requests or have to pick the best model that's submitting inference to any particular topic, right? As I mentioned earlier, the network is going to intelligently weight and synthesize all the various inferences that are being submitted by the various model makers for that topic, for that epoch. And basically, this is the network combined output, right? That synthesized output that consumers actually are requesting. You notice that there's confidence intervals. Confidence intervals are also going to be useful in terms of saying, well, we believe that we said, hey, the network inference, the synthesized inferences is forecasting $141.83. The infinite intervals are going to say, look, of all the various workers that submitted inferences, this is how close they are in terms of that network inference normalized, right? They're not available on testnet just yet. They are going to be for mainnet, so I want to make a call out there that you won't see those confidence intervals right now being reported back, right? This is just another sample output there. There's a little bit around response explanation, right? And yeah, I will pause there, and we'll go back to questions from the audience.
Let me check all of our platforms real quick. None have come in yet. I think everything's still pretty clear. Again, we will be posting the recording after. So most likely that's when quite a few people will watch it. And if any questions pop up then, I'll make sure to go to the appropriate channels.
Yeah,
So if you are watching this in the recording, make sure just to go into the Telegram group for the event and ping either me or another admin, and we'll make sure that your question finds its way to the appropriate person.
great. Thank you, Austin. Thanks for having us, hosting us for this, and yeah, I look forward to answering any questions, and we'll be available for any of the builders out there. Thank you, everyone.
Perfect. All right, fantastic. And then as far as maybe you can go into a little bit what Allora is hoping to see in some of the projects that people are building,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
kind of like innovations you're looking for.
Yeah, that's a great point. I failed to mention. What can you do with these inferences, right? I mean, what's the thesis here? Obviously, um, you know, in Web 2 we see a lot of machine learning being used, right?
Mhm.
Web 3, we look at protocols, a lot of things, a lot of protocols, strategies. They're very much reactive, threshold based in nature, right? And obviously, for a lot of reasons, ML engineering skills are tough to come by. Open source models are not necessarily the greatest, but there's a lot of room for Web3 to be able to take advantage of machine learning and its ability to make protocols more preemptive and or proactive in nature, right?
Mhm.
So some clear examples like like let's say you were taking out a loan in a money market. Yes, there's tools out there like DeFi Saver, InstaDApp, Zerion, and you could build your own tools that will obviously monitor your health threshold, maybe give it permissions to, alert you or top off your loan if your health threshold, your interval health threshold is going down, right? And the idea with machine learning intelligence is to be proactive. Wouldn't it be great, if you were taking out a loan on a money market, if you can predict the future price of the target asset that maybe you're looping or took a loan out, and if predict the price is going to go down, why not be able to pay back the loan and get out of that position, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes I know that one of the hardest things, in the space is taking profit, right? Being more proactive with taking profit, and that's a clear example where I think we've all probably done this in life, where we either round trip something, or, as I mentioned, if you're more reactive and you got, I wouldn't say a black swan, but if the market corrects 5-10%, had you had some intelligent inference or price predictions or your volatility predictions, you could have obviously proactively closed that loan out, paid it back, and captured more profit that way versus being reactive, where you're reacting to a market correction or cascading liquidation, right? And so the idea there is
Mhm.
that predictive inferences can supercharge whether it's agentic based trading, whether it's, strategy, agent based strategies that, now you put some capital in a vault and you have an agent that's using the Allora price predictions to, automatically leverage up and down based upon the directionality, right? And the idea there is to obviously, beat the market. Obviously human traders, we can be emotional. We're not necessarily the best at trading, and obviously you're not. You have to sleep, you have to eat, but at least with agents, they can pretty much run 24/7, right? And by having these predictive inferences, you now have supercharged your agent. Um, you could have thresholds. Sometimes I know I've done it myself where I might be doing some leverage looping on a money market. My collateral factory, my collateral is going up, and I'm not able to sit on my hands. I'm not taking profit, right? And I'm taking out a more and more. I'm taking out a bigger loan, and so these are the things that inferences can help with from a strategy perspective, right? Um, we've done things with market making agents on top of Polymarket, right? We've done some things with binary options. There's strategies coming out, where you can do perps trading, right? But the whole idea is that you have these predictive signals, whether it's volatility and/or price predictions, that can feed off-chain agents to use that intelligence to get ahead of the market or get ahead of some downturns, et cetera, right? In terms of levering up, levering down, scaling out of your position, scaling in your position, et cetera, so on and so forth, right?
Mhm.
Avoiding potential liquidation from that perspective.
Okay. I love the kind of model and way of approaching it of kind of consider what are the human weak points and how those
Yeah,
can be expanded with it, as opposed
yeah,
to just trying to replace yourself as an actor. How do you
yeah,
expand yourself as an actor?
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. We, like I said, I think a lot of us have been there, been in DeFi for a while. It's the human element, whether it's greed or or just the fact that you're not up 24/7. You hear the pains of like people that spend so many times. You have that nervousness, or you're watching your positions when you have large positions in the market, and so we've all lived through that. And DeFi, there are tools out there today, but we feel that, yeah, with machine learning and intelligence, protocols are going to become, or agents will eventually be interacting with a lot of these protocols on chain, and hopefully they'll use intelligence from the network, from the Allora network, right? And so ultimately, like I said, that's our goal. Is when builders, protocols, think or want to consume predictions, forecasts, et cetera, they think of the Allora network, the place to go for intelligent predictions that can supercharge their agent or their protocol.
okay, fantastic. Yeah, great summary. And honestly, yeah, kind of great wrap up at the end there from you
Yeah,
of kind of what probably a lot of you participating in this should be kind of considering as really powerful applications of that technology. There's a lot of talk about, ML and AI within Web3, but I think it'll be exciting to see how that ends up playing out when the rubber actually meets the road. Because I think a lot of people are kind of underutilizing it, and maybe it's from like fear complexity or something like that. But something like Allora steps in, suddenly makes that much more achievable. What was extremely daunting to try to implement yourself before.
yeah,
So, all right, awesome. Thank you so much, Robert.
yeah. Appreciate it. Thanks, Austin.
All right, great. All right, everybody. As I said, if you're watching this in the recording afterwards, which I believe a lot of you are, yeah, just make sure to ping me or another admin with your questions related to Allora or about anything, and we'll make sure that those get pushed through to somebody who can accurately answer your question. Other than that, let's get back to building.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you.
See you.
Bye.
Bust a deal. Face the winner.